Hello and welcome to another episode of Zero BS Estate Agency. Today I'm interviewing Jason Cannon, an industry veteran with over 40 years worth of experience on this very podcast. Now, this guy has an amazing track record. At 21, he was running his own office, including 3 others. And by the time he was just 26, he was running an entire region. And in this episode, he shares his valuable perspective on what really maximizes a home's value when selling. And his answer may surprise you. Now, if you're an agent looking to step up your sales game or a homeowner looking to maximize the sales price, this is an episode that you do not want to miss. So Jason, what is the one thing that truly maximizes the value of someone's home when they go to sell their property?
Morning, John. Love that question. I've thought hard about it. Before we cover that, because I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. I'm what you'd call an institutional estate agent. I've tried to leave many times. I've been doing this for more than 40 years. And absolutely love helping people. That's my one thing, is helping people, empowering entrepreneurs to start their own businesses and to be the very best version of themselves. And I know from my experience that it's being successful is it simple? Is it easy? It's about process, having processes and having goals, I think, John. I see a world where everyone has the opportunity to work with a professional coach or someone like you, someone who's got, great knowledge, loves working with people and helping people. That's why I do what I do.
But your background, you say your background in agency, 40 years. Can you just give us a little overview of what's happened in the last 40 years? Like for you personally, in your career?
Yeah. Apprenticeship with Bovis Homes at 17, did that for a year. Smashed all my targets. Boss said to me, sorry, we don't really have anything for you. So I said, what should I do? My first mentor, a guy called Keith Carter, who's my manager, said, go and work for these guys, go and work for Jackson's. Here's the guy's number. Called him up, said, need your help. He said, come and see me. 2 days later, I was working for them. By the time I was 21, I was running an office. I'd opened 3-4 offices from cold starts and loved that. By 26, I was running a region. At 31, I had the opportunity to go into partnership and start my own business, which I did. Sold that 5 years later. Started another business in 2001. A couple of offices, 12 team members. Sold that in 2016 to a firm called Keaton's in East London. I've been doing some coaching and some consultancy. 2006, did an NLP qualification, and I'd also qualified as a hypnotherapist. So all things the mind, psychology, understanding human behavior and nature. I spent my time re-educating myself, John. My father was an educator. He was a very inspirational teacher, and he was very disappointed that I was an estate agent. That's the honest truth. He liked the fact that I was making good money, but he didn't like the fact that I was a, shitty, unprofessional estate agent. So I had to prove him wrong there. So that's why I went and did those qualifications. And at that point, I realized I actually loved learning. Learning was my fuel, John. Learning fueled me every day. What can I learn? What can I then teach? So
you are fantastically placed. Sorry, Jason, just to cut in there, mate, because I love the fact that I know it's a brief history that you've given us. But that is like powerful. 40 years. At 21, you're opening offices. At 26, you're running a region. You're building estate agencies and you're selling them. So honestly, you are literally best placed to answer the question. So what is the one thing that truly maximizes the value of someone's home when they come to sell their property? What would you actually say that is?
It's a great question. I did a poll recently And the poll tells me that 20% believe it's sales, 40% believe it's marketing, and the other 40% believe it's negotiation. I listened to your podcast with Stephen Brown. I'm a big fan of Stephen's, love him. I think he's absolutely brilliant for the industry. And I agree with a lot of what he said about negotiation. It's choosing when you have that conversation around negotiation, around your fee, that's really important. So it's not the conversation, it's when you have the conversation. Because a customer has this thing in their head, John. They have this wire in their head. All they're interested in when they first meet you is, what's my house worth? What are you going to charge me? And until you've got those two elephants out of the room, they're going to struggle. They're struggling to listen to you, aren't they? Right. So to answer your question, I dissected this. My strong view as a serial estate agent is that it's marketing. My experience tells me that, because without marketing, without the best marketing, you can't negotiate with people. Your job as an estate agent, or my job as an estate agent, was always number one job is to create competition for your client's biggest asset.
Yep.
Don't think many people would disagree with that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. I've always worked in a sales model. I've never worked in a listing model. Actually, I'll rephrase that. When I was young, when I worked at Jackson's in the Halifax, it was a listing model. It was list as much as you can, chuck as much as you can against the wall. Days on market, percentage of asking price. It was driven by two things: listings and fees. And in those days, back in the late 80s, we were going out and we were getting 3% fees. This was way before, we were the precursor to Foxtons, and Foxtons going out and charging 2.5%. So I know we were listing agents, we weren't sales agents. What I teach now to my guys and girls that I work with is you've got to be a sales agent. We look at the numbers on average in London. If X agent lists 10 properties, they only move 4.5 of their customers. I work in a model that moves at least 6.5 out of 10 of their clients.
Can I ask a question? Sorry,
go for it,
Jason, because I'm loving the nuggets here, right? But for those listing versus sales, what exactly do you mean by
that? Most agents are pie chart influenced, get as many listings as they can, have market share on listings, boards breed boards, listings breed listings, and they're not really focused on selling properties. They're focused on listing properties. I'll put it on the market. I'll put a board up and I'll pray that it sells. The three P's of traditional transactional real estate in the UK. Yeah. The new breed of agents, and the agents that you and I want to work with and spend time with, are proactive marketers. Yeah. They find motivated people, they find motivated clients, and they say, right, I want you as a client for life. Can I be your trusted real estate agent for life? Yes, you can, John. Okay, great. So I'm going to be consultative versus transactional.
And so a listing
really
agent,
get to understand you.
Yeah. So a listing agent is an agent. It says things that sound nice around those two things you mentioned before. What you're going to charge me and how much is my place worth? So a listing agent will say what they need to say in terms of price in order to justify the fee.
Absolutely, yeah.
Versus a sales agent actually delivers results and still charges a higher fee, or should.
Here's my results. Here's my days on market. Here's my percentage of asking price. Here's my last 5 Google reviews. Here's my last 5 testimony. I've actually got a video testimony from John, my last client, and this is what John says about me. Yeah. When I list a house, I say to my clients, this isn't a choose me conversation, John. Yeah. What I want to do is I want to present to you your different options as a seller. We'll talk about the online option. We'll talk about an auction option. We'll talk about a modern auction method. We're talking about traditional sales method. Here's your options. Tell me what you want, and then I can tell you whether or not I can give you that. Or I would say to you, actually, John, we might choose not to work together. bit of psychology here.
Mm-hmm.
We might choose not to work together, John. John's saying, well, why would we do that? So because I'm a business owner, I work with a small number of clients, and my goal is to move every one of those clients. I don't list houses, I sell and I move people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your motivation as the seller, you've told me what you want, why you want it, what are the consequences of it not happening. Yeah. And I can help you with that if you want me to help you with that. Let's just go back to that question. So we talked earlier, didn't we, about those percentages? I've got a list of 10 things here. The best comprehensive approach to selling somebody's home to maximize the value. 1, skilled, experienced agent. 2, motivated sellers. Sounds obvious. Mm-hmm. Effective marketing, strategic pricing, property presentation, local market knowledge, negotiation skills, responsive communication, networking. When I mean networking, I mean an agent network, buyers, agents, other agents, brokers, networking, yeah? Mm-hmm. And continual monitoring. This is a 30-day plan I'm going to build with you as my client, because we know on average, I looked at some Zoopla stats a couple of days ago, days on market, days to get an offer. We know that that's gone up. I think 2022, the average days was about 22. Now it's about 35 days.
Yeah.
So let's work on a 35-day plan, a success plan to get your property sold. And it's got those 10 ingredients. So for me, it's about marketing. Can I share an example of
absolutely
of me doing that, John? So yeah. We were asked to go and see a house that had been on the market for 3 months with an online agent, and it was around November. It's around this time of the year. I'd looked at the agent's details, looked at the floor plan, and thought, this is a cracking 3-bedroom semi-detached house. Got 3 double bedrooms, your normal lounge, dining room, open plan kitchen, conservatory extension on the back. Nice modern development, about 20 years old. It's on the market for what looks like an okay price. Been on for 3 months. Why hasn't it sold? The answer was then obvious when I looked at the pictures. The whole place was really cluttered. So I said, "Yeah, I can definitely help. I'll come with a plan. We'll talk about it." So we talked about their motivation to move, and we spent quite a lot of time talking about that. Long story short, John, couple with a child. They tried for 12 years to have a kid, and sadly hadn't managed to have a child. Gone through IVF, etc. Still hadn't worked. They decided that it definitely wasn't going to happen because they took their bath out and they put a shower room in there, put a wet room in upstairs in their first floor bathroom. Anyway, as luck would have it, wife becomes pregnant, has a kid. You can imagine this is like the Messiah being born, John, yeah? Because they've tried for so long for a child.
Yeah.
Grandparents live around the corner, so they're also involved in this. The house was a shrine to this child. Every single room was packed, books, toys, bikes, scooters, trampolines, you name it, it was there. And the child was, I don't know, 5, something like that, 4 or 5. So I get to the property, show me round. We're literally sort of pushing round, boxes and things to get into rooms, and even the shower room was full of buckets and toys and all the rest of it. So I had an honesty moment conversation. We started with their motivation, and I said 0 to 10, how much do you want to move? And why? I knew the move was because the parents were moving. The parents were helping with childcare. Mum and dad are out of work. They needed the parents to help them with the childcare for the Messiah. And so it was non-negotiable as far as they were concerned. They were moving, and they were desperate. So I said, okay, well, if I present a strategy to you about how we can do this, how much money are you can you invest in this? So what do you mean? Okay, well, we've got some good data that says that if we stage a property, we declutter a property, we do some painting, some simple stuff, we get that curb appeal looking good. You got one chance to make a great first impression. And at the moment, the impression of your property, let's look at it in comparison with the competition. Let's look at it in the market at the moment. How do you think it looks? If you're a buyer, imagine you're a buyer and you're looking at your property as it's displayed now currently. Yeah, okay, looks cluttered, looks a bit tired, blah, blah, blah. So I ran a successful business. I had property managers, I had contractors that worked, with the business. So I said, look, I'll get a contractor to come round. We'll get the garden cleared. We'll get the front door painted. We'll get the lounge painted. Where can you put all, where you're going to move anyway? You've decided you're going to move. It's non-negotiable. Where can you put all these things? Okay, well, Dad's garage. Great. Okay. So we take it off the market. We get these little things done. Cost them about 700-800 quid. Didn't break the bank. Rephotographed it. We dropped the price. It was on the market for, I think, 500. We dropped it to 475. We took it off. We relaunched it in January, and we sold it for over 10% over asking price within 30 days.
Wow. So you got more than 500 grand.
More than 500 grand. Yeah. We had 18 viewers over the course of three block viewings. We gave people 7-8 minutes in there to view it. So we said, John, you want to see it? Great, fantastic. Here's your slot. Can you please make sure you're on time? Any questions? Here's all the details, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do second viewings, etc., etc. So we had 18 viewings, 4 offers, and then it went a bit nuts because we'd created the competition. We'd filled the room with people. All of those people in that room didn't have a badge on saying, I've got this much to spend. I've got this much to spend. You were going in, I was going out. Next one was going in, next one was going out. We dropped the road. All the neighbours knew it was on the market. That listing that we sold then generated another 5 market appraisals and another £35,000 in fees.
Brilliant.
That became our listing magnet on that estate, that modern development.
So is it then purely marketing, or is it marketing strategy?
It's marketing strategy. It's all those bits, isn't it? It's, I've worked with home stagers. I've worked with virtual stagers on new homes, which works incredibly well. I've worked with painters and decorators, odd job men. I've worked with, gardeners, landscapers. One of those questions I say to a vendor is, if I decide to invest my time or my team's time in selling your home and getting you moved, how much are you going to invest in that? Because we make an assumption, don't we? We just put the house on the market and, the agent pays for the marketing, they pay for the photography, videography, etc. I'm working with agents now and they're going out and they're charging 1.75 plus VAT, plus they're charging 500 quid towards marketing spend. Because you and I both know, John, that, marketing isn't just pressing a button and sticking it on a property portal.
Yeah.
There's some really good data now from particularly London agents. They're selling things on TikTok. They're selling things on Instagram. They're getting inquiries online. They're not having to rely on property portal. So if you looked at that, it's hot for so many days on Rightmove or Zoopla. If you ramp that up with some targeted marketing, some leaflet dropping in a local area, networking with your agent buddies and buyers agents, you're doing all this before it goes live. Then you're doing the preview of the video on social media. You're just ramping. You're just driving that competition, aren't you, John? You're creating that competition. Yeah, exactly. You're creating more fear of missing out. That's your number one job. Yeah, simple.
Yeah. Totally, I completely agree with that. I had an agent I gave a property to via my TikTok in South London, an agent called Jack Terry, who has been on this podcast as well, right? And so what he did, the seller of that property, he said, "Look, the seller's absolutely dreaming. I'll do my best I can for him, but there's no way on God's earth I'm spending any money on marketing." So he agreed with the seller to pay, I think, 600 quid. He said, £600. I'll organise absolutely everything to do with the marketing, and I'll even get like drone footage, so on and so forth. Did everything he possibly could using the seller's money. Now the reason Jack did it was because Jack was like, look, I don't, and he said, open with the seller, you're not going to get the money that you want, and I'm going to try my best The seller wanted 625. Jack was like, it's not even nowhere close to 600 grand. Not even close. Yeah, that this is worth. There is no comparable evidence. Jack, though, being the professional that he is, with the marketing that he did, obviously have the big hurdle of a bank, obviously downvaluing the property, but he got offers at 600 and 600 above. And for that particular property, but the seller said, actually, nah, do you know what? I'm not going to sell it. And Jack could have paid that 500 quid himself. So when you're talking about skin in the game from a seller, and you're talking about an agent, actually a professional agent, understanding that not every single property sells, but they're going to give the best shot to maximize the value.
Yeah,
I was absolutely, Jack, definitely, mate, definitely charge the seller for that, because one, Jack doesn't think, based on comparable evidence, the truth, the reality that place is going to sell for that money today, what that seller wanted. And ultimately, in the end, the seller said, actually, I'm not going to sell anyway. So Jack's not actually wasted his time or money. So I completely agree with that. And I think everything that you've said in this podcast so far, if you're an agent listening to what Jason has just said, right, my advice to you would be to get in contact with him, because when we're talking about marketing strategy and he's telling you about people viewing the property, obviously creating that competition, 7-8 minutes inside the property, then £35,000 added to a sales pipeline, along with loads of inquiries. If I'm an agent, listen to this, I need to be speaking to Jason to work out what he actually did to create that scenario, to have that extra 35 grand off the back of a seller's property and doing a good job for the seller as well. I think that is just like that. And it seems so simple as we talk about it now, Jason, but what you've just described is elite level agency. And also you're actively interviewing the seller. You're not throwing shit at the wall and hopefully some of it sticks. You're interviewing them to work out whether they are actually worth working with.
Yeah. The skill of that agent, John, I make it sound easy, is that, I'll do a consultation with them to decide whether or not I can add some value to their move. If I can genuinely help them, then I will. The skill is finding out. We have two prices, don't we? If I'm the seller, I've got the price I would like, and the price I'd like to sell for, and the price I will sell for. Same with the buyer. The buyer will have a price that they'd like to pay and a price they will pay. Your job as the agent is to find out both those numbers. That requires skill and experience. And it's not just a case, until I trust the agent, I've got to know them, I've got to like them, and I've got to trust them. Until I trust them, I'm not going to give them that number. So for me, this is something that, again, sounds obvious. When you buy a property, is it your number one choice? Is it the best property for you in the market at the moment? So is it number one? Me as the agent, am I your number one choice of agent? Ask that question. At the moment, John, am I your number one choice of agent? You are, Jason. Okay. Can I just ask you, what makes me your number one choice of agent? Get them to say it out loud. Get them to explain it to you. Yeah. Now, I know that sounds a bit arrogant, you saying, well, am I the best? Am I number one? Trust me, it works.
But here's the other thing about that as well. And I think it works because I always say whoever's the most confident wins the conversation. And so, and when you're asking those type of questions, it's about them. It's not about you. When you're asking about their motivation to sell, it's about them, their next chapter. It's not about you. You're just trying to facilitate it and working it all out. And honestly, well, clearly it works because you've done it, and you've done it multiple times, and you've sold estate agencies. You know what I mean? You're 21. You're a sales manager running opening 3 offices. At 26, you're a regional in a business. So it clearly works. We've got literally about 3 minutes left of this podcast, right? Now, you mentioned NLP, mentoring, etc. Can you give those listening right now a quick snapshot before we run out of time, exactly what it is you're doing for agents today?
I'm helping them think in terms of possibilities, John. I'm giving them models that they can use every day, proven systems and models. Perhaps it's an overused couple of words, but Carol Esther-Wick talks about if one person can, then anyone can. I'm a firm believer in that. Sometimes until we feel it, touch it, smell it, we don't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, using psychology, NLP, and as you said, being person-centered, I'm going to get to, my thing is I want to get to know you. I want to get to know how you think, how you work. And that's my superpower. It's getting to understand people. And then if we can add the word possibility to a conversation, because very often, the little guy inside says, I can't charge X fee because I'm not worth it, or that's too much money. It'll never work. No one can. No one. You can't run a 4-minute mile. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Adding that word possibility to that script, in that dialogue in your head. Is there a possibility that I could go and charge this? Is there a possibility that I could charge 2% and get paid £1,000 as a marketing spend by my client? Well, I suppose there's a possibility. Okay, well, let's nurture that possibility. Let's reframe how you see this opportunity, or let's reframe how you see the world. So yeah, I mean that might does that answer that question in about
it does. And
seconds?
what I'm going to do is have the in the show notes your details.
Thank you, John.
To make sure that people are able to get in contact with you. Honestly, thank you so much, Jason, for coming on this podcast. Honestly, I've just remained pretty much silent throughout, because just listening, hanging off everything you've just said, because that is, again, I know I don't want to make it sound like trivial, but that is actually elite level agency. What you've done in the past and what you're currently doing is incredible.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, John.